they were not having that kind of fear, in the sense that there was so much morality, there was so much truthfulness, honesty, that they themselves would go and give the taxes. There was no pressure on them. They would very happily as their prescribed duty. Of course, in today's world, the scenario is completely different. People have to be reminded of their duties, and so many taxes are there. You go to purchase something, there is some tax. So people are so much tax in that way. And in the earlier ages, that there was this system of give and take. It is not that they were just paying the taxes. And in fact, Manu Samhita explains that the citizens had to give 1/5 of their animals to the king, 1/10 of their metals or whatever important metals they had in their house, 1/10 of their grains, 1/4 of their pious credits, and 1/6 of their sinful activities. Because by collecting the money or doing some kind of business, there is some kind of sin involved. And even doing regular activities, there is so much sin involved. And king would take that sin, 1/6 of their sin. And his duty was to see that the citizens are protected. Srila Prabhupada explains that who is a Kshatriya? Kshatriya is the one who protects people from falling in a material bondage to lust. They are not able to find the goal of life, then he has to uplift them. That is the real duty of Kshatriya. We may think that sometimes somebody may be very active or very passionate, we may just label him as Kshatriya. But that is just one aspect of his character. But the real duty of Kshatriya is to protect people from falling down in this material world. People are, therefore, this knowledge was given to the saintly kings, Rajarshis, who would in that way guide citizens and protect them from all respects, give them complete security. So they were reciprocating in that way. Even the citizens, they were so comfortable with a particular king that they would happily give. So in that way we can see that there was a system of give and take. And even in their ordinary dealings, there was bartering system. I would give something and for his needs, what he needs, and I will accept what he has for my needs. So in that way there was not any economic crisis, because the resources of this material nature were handled very carefully. In the present situation we can see that people or the leaders of the society are unaware of this fact, and therefore there is no proper use of resources, or the Mother Earth is not considered as a personality, or the Mother Earth who can fulfill all our needs. And therefore, there have been so many economic crises in today's world. And the more we try to take from the Mother Earth without giving anything in return, then she is going to withhold. Just like somebody has some wealth and you may just try to snatch it away. What is the immediate reaction? He would try to hold it. He would not allow that to be snatched away. Similarly, the Mother Earth has so many resources, but she is not very happy to give, because in the name of industrialization or whatever we may call it, people are exploiting Mother Earth. The oil, they are drilling so much that they have to go deeper and deeper, because Mother Earth is holding that again back. And in that way we can see that there are so many economic crises are going on. In the earlier ages, the kings were conscious that they have to protect the Mother Earth, the environment, the animals of the society. They play an important role in the ecology of the system. And therefore, we could see that there were no economic crisis. People were more happy. There were more morality was there, truthfulness, honesty. But in today's world, these values are getting lost. And the purpose of the Shastras or the scriptures is to bring people to the higher levels in terms of their character, their values, so that they realize the presence of Supreme Lord Krishna in the form of his various energies. Rasopsam Kauteya. Krishna says that I am the taste of water. In that way, one should see that that is Krishna's energy in the form of water, which is so easily available to us. And we take it so much granted that, and we use so much water. And in fact, last year, Gopal's Garden children, on that annual day, they perform a small drama, wonderful skit. But the message was so much strong and important that it was quite alarming. And these children, they showed that after some years, there'll be guards protecting the water reservoirs. Yes, it can happen like that. Because what is happening in today's world is that there is so much pollution going on and so much wastage is thrown in the water. The water bodies of the rivers are getting polluted. Even the oceans are getting polluted. People may think that we just dump everything in the ocean, but ocean bodies are also getting polluted, and which in turn is affecting the entire environment in which we are living. And why these problems are going on, some person of economics, he was telling that the resources of this material world are limited, but our desires are unlimited. So that is the incompatible situation. And we desire more than what we need. And therefore, there is crisis. What we are supposed to share with each other, somebody is trying to take more than what he needs, then he is creating an imbalance. And therefore, if we go more deeper into the scriptures, which people may think that this is a mythology or this is not applicable in today's age. But if we go deeper and we see that the very basic principles, in Ishopanishad it is explained that Ishavasya sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita ma grudha kasya suddhanam. The very first mantra, it explains that everything is property of the Lord. We do not possess anything. When we came in this material world, we did not have anything. And we cannot take anything when we leave. But in between, we claim so much that we are going to live eternally. And we create so much imbalance in the environment, in the nature. And therefore, the very basic principle of Ishopanishad, if somebody carefully studies that everything is property of the Lord, Ishavasya sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita. One should take whatever is just necessary. One should not increase the needs in one's life. One should try to live whatever basic things he can survive. And one should leave what is not required for others. And in that way, there will be balance in the society. The resources of this material world can be balanced. And Srila Prabhupada, he gives one more different angle. And he explains that if somebody follows the principle of Ekadashi, very simple principle, then it has such a great impact on the world. So much of grains will be saved. And there will not be any kind of starvation. At some places we can see that people are having too much and they are throwing grains in the ocean, because if they sell the grains at a lesser price, then they will not get any profit. So they have to keep the prices high. And what extra grains they will do, they will throw. But if the same grains can be fed to the poor children who are starving, then there will not be any problem. So in this way, we can see that this is the duty of the leaders or those who are in the controller position. So this system of give and take was followed by the earlier kings or the citizens. And we can see that Nanda Maharaj, who was staying in Vrindavan, he was like a king of Vrindavan. And he was having some kind of control of that area. But he was so dutiful that he knew that he has to pay these yearly taxes. He was going to King Kansa at Mathura. And in that way, he is setting a very wonderful example. Usually people have fear that if I give something to somebody, then I may lose. That is the fear. And that's why people do not want to give. But in fact, it is explained that in giving one receives. And the more one develops that attitude of giving, Krishna will also make sure that he is not falling short when he actually needs. And in that way, the complete balance in the system or in the entire environment can be maintained. So this was one aspect of it. Then another aspect, when King Nanda Maharaj and Vasudeva then meet. That time they were so happy to see each other. Vasudeva, he saw Nanda Maharaj. He got the news that Nanda Maharaj has come to Mathura. And he went to see him. And he had some kind of doubt in his mind. He was thinking that whether Nanda Maharaj knows that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is, the child was transferred, because he knew that Balaram is the son of Vasudeva, the son of Rohini. But whether he knows that Kansa is also Vasudeva's son, so he went to talk with Nanda Maharaj. And he was expressing his concern. He didn't directly ask that, how is my son Krishna? Because when Vasudeva, he took Krishna in that night when Krishna was born, only he knew that Krishna is his son. Because everyone else was sleeping under the influence of Yogamaya. And he only knew that he has transferred this child under the order of Lord Krishna himself, who told that transfer me to Vrindavan and bring that girl here. And he did that in that night. And nobody knew that this had happened. And everyone was thinking that Krishna is born in Vrindavan. Of course, Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. Krishna is originally from Vrindavan, and there are other interpretations of the story also. So he wanted to make sure that Nanda Maharaj doesn't know this mystery. And he started asking. And he is expressing his concern about the protection of children in Vrindavan. And then the way he told was wonderful. He said that because Vasudeva was Kshatriya and Nanda Maharaj was Vaishya, and the duty of Vaishyas is to protect the cows, Krishi Goraksha Vanijya, and duty of Kshatriyas is to protect the citizens. And he was expressing that I could not protect my children, which I am supposed to do. All my 6 children, they were mercilessly killed by Kansa. And I failed in my duty in one sense. He was expressing his concern. So indirectly he was asking the welfare of the child who was born in, who was there, that is Lord Krishna. And then the Maharaj, he starts speaking and he explains that how he celebrated the birth ceremony of Krishna and like that. And then later on he tells, Vasudeva tells to Nanda Maharaj that please go back again to Vrindavan to protect the child. Because while conversing, he was understanding exactly what are his needs, interests and concerns. What Nanda Maharaj was having in his mind, what may be his anxiety. And he is not just telling all his problems, how he suffered and all, but that way he is understanding the mind of Nanda Maharaj. So that is a very important point we can learn, that how when we converse with each other or communicate with each other, how to see that others' needs, interest and concern are maintained, or we are also concerned about that. It is not that only my needs, interest and concerns are important. So, and his higher purpose was to protect the child, because he was also concerned about Krishna, that Krishna should be protected in Vrindavan. Although he was in Mathura, but his consciousness was in Vrindavan. He was always thinking of Krishna, that whether the child is safe or not. And in that way, he was continuously Krishna conscious. So this was a wonderful point. I was thinking that how Shukadeva Goswami is including a complete chapter, the meeting of Nanda Maharaj and Vasudeva. Because when two great souls they meet, their center of discussion is Krishna. Macchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam. They are discussing about Krishna. That shows the quality of consciousness they are having. And both Nanda Maharaj and Vasudeva, they were concerned about protecting the child. Here Kansa also came to give some kind of presentation to Kansa, so that he is pleased, Kansa is pleased, and in that way would not harm the child. And that was his concern. Nanda Maharaj's concern was to protect the child. And therefore he came all the way from Vrindavan to Mathura. And Vasudeva also, although he was away from Lord Krishna since his birth, but still his consciousness was in Vrindavan, thinking about Krishna, that Krishna is protected, Krishna should not be harmed. And in that way they exhibit the highest quality. What is our consciousness? So therefore it is very, very important to know that, important to understand from this story also, from these verses, that how we may be doing so many services, but what is our consciousness? How we perform all our services, in what consciousness we are performing. That is important. And that will determine our the level of our consciousness. And we can see that how this principle of give and take or protecting, the duty of Kshatriyas was to protect all citizens. And if the Kshatriyas or the kings, they would be so much powerful that nothing would go wrong in their kingdom. Everything were going on so properly because they were able to protect their citizens, and because they were performing sacrifices, the yagyas, and therefore the demigods were also pleased by their sacrifices, and they would supply the rains, and because of the rains, the grains would grow. And in that way, Srila Prabhupada, in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he explains that how this system or this cycle, evam pravartitam chakram, nanu vartiyatiya, that this cycle of sacrifices or the Lord who himself he has given this system of sacrifices, Sayagya Prajasvishta Purovacha Prajapati, and by performing these sacrifices, how demigods would supply all the necessities, and in that way everyone was very happy. And Lord Krishna himself, in that next verse, he explains that if somebody takes all the necessities but does not offer back to the demigods, then he is considered to be a thief. So that is a very strong statement on part of Lord Krishna. Because whatever we have received from the Mother Nature, we should reciprocate by giving back. Or from the demigods, we should be grateful to them. And therefore, how to be grateful to them by performing various sacrifices to please them. And that was a system in earlier ages. And kings would see that everyone follows that, and sometimes they would perform big sacrifices, and nothing would go wrong. And in the later chapters of 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami explains the story. In Dwarka, there was a Brahmana whose son dies. As soon as he takes birth, this son dies. So this Brahmana comes to the king, Ugrasen, and he tells that how it is possible that in your presence my son is dying when we are very young. So that means there is some kind of flaw, in the sense that the king was responsible for the death of child. Something goes wrong. If servant does something wrong, then the leader is held responsible, or his master is held responsible, that how your servant is doing something wrong. So that is a high responsibility of the leader or the king or anyone who takes a leadership position. They are held responsible because somebody does wrong. They are not training them properly. So therefore, this Brahmana comes and starts accusing this king. He tells that you are Brahma Dvisha. You are envious of Brahmanas. Therefore these things are going on. You are lubdha. You are very greedy. You do not like to see the progress of us. Like this he was accusing, he went on accusing him. And he went. Again the second child was born, again the child was dead. And this was 9th time the child was dying. 9th time he came. At that time Arjuna was there. And he was accusing that just see in the presence of Lord Krishna, Sankarshan, Pradyumna Aniruddha, so there are such great Kshatriyas. In their presence such things are happening. So he was not getting that protection from the king. King's duty was to protect. But he was not getting that. So he was accusing. He was very disturbed. And Brahmanas are supposed to be protected. They are not supposed to be taxed. In the earlier days, there was no question of taxing Brahmanas or Vaishnavas. All the taxes were for Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. Because the duty of Brahmanas was different. So that time Arjuna was little bit disturbed because he was accusing Kshatriyas, Kshatriya Bandhu, like that he was saying. And Arjuna was getting disturbed because he was Kshatriya. And he was thinking that how this Brahmana could say such things. So he decided to take the case in his hand. That he decided that, okay, let me take the initiative. And he tells this Brahmana that, do not worry, I am there. This Gandiva boy is there. And I had defeated Lord Shiva, and who has awarded me this Pashupatastra. I have such power, and I will protect you. Next time when your child is getting born, just let me know. So Krishna was there, but he knew that he wanted to reveal certain different things. He wanted to again show his supremacy, that how ultimately the supreme protection is given by Lord Krishna. And he allowed Arjuna to speak in that way. And the 10th time when the child was getting born, this Brahmana he called Arjuna. And he said that maybe today the child will be born, you please come and protect him. Do not allow anyone to take the child. And Arjuna came there. And he was trying to protect. He shot arrows in the sky and trying to protect from all sides. And a child was born and then disappeared. So again this Brahmana came and started telling that, see what has happened. You cannot do anything. You could not do anything. You could not protect the child. So again Arjuna was very much disturbed. His blood started boiling. Kshatriyas, they cannot tolerate insult. And he decided that I will fetch the child wherever the child has gone. And because Arjuna was having some mystic powers, he empowered himself with those mystic powers, and he decided that he will go to Yamaloka, because probably Yamadutas might have taken. So he goes there. He doesn't find a child there. Then he goes to Indraloka. He doesn't find child. He goes to so many different places, but he doesn't find child anywhere. And Arjuna had taken the vow that if he is not able to protect the child, he would enter into fire. He would burn himself in the fire. So, that time Lord Krishna comes and tells that, don't worry, I am your friend, we will go and find a child. And Krishna brings his chariot, and the chariot starts running, both of them sit in the chariot, and Krishna starts taking the chariot in the northern direction, and he starts going from one planet to another. They start traveling interplanetary. Modern scientists, they cannot understand how this is possible. That how they can travel interplanetary with the same bodies, with the chariot, but they had these mystic powers. Krishna, nothing is impossible for the Supreme Lord. And Krishna takes the chariot far beyond Brahmaloka, beyond the border of universe. And they go beyond the universe, where there is darkness. And it is explained that the horses of Krishna, they were little afraid to enter the darkness, because there was no light. And somebody may think that how because Krishna's chariot, Krishna's horses, they are all transcendent, how they were afraid. But again it is explained that Krishna was, in this incarnation, he was playing again an ordinary person. I mean, he didn't exhibit his all powers. Or sometimes he performs certain pastimes by which he even bewilders those who are atheistic. And he then releases his Sudarshan Chakra. And there is a light. And again the horses start going in the forward direction. And then they see the effulgence of Brahmajyoti. Arjuna also sees the effulgence of Brahmajyoti. And they reach the abode of Mahavishnu. And they see the huge serpents, very, very huge serpents, and thousands of hoods. And Mahavishnu is lying on the bed of the serpents. And all the children were with Mahavishnu. And the reason why he had to steal the children,